Okay, we're back to talk about Murderbot, episode 6 on Apple TV Plus. This episode titled Common Feed. This is written by Chris Weitz and Paul Weitz and directed by Aurora Guerrero. Murderbot and Mensa are stranded with the Hopper after the beacon explosion at the end of episode 5, but Murderbot deleted the repair manual in his storage to make room for more episodes of Sanctuary Moon. Murderbot is also injured in the explosion, but Mensa is able to connect him to the Hopper to fix him, which gives them the idea to use wiring from inside Murderbot's spine to fix the Hopper. Back with the rest of the crew, Labibi turns out not to be who she seems. By the time Murderbot and Mensa return, she has the rest of the crew held hostage at gunpoint. Murderbot quickly shoots her in the head, disabling that threat. While the rest of the crew sort of has a freak out about this, Murderbot doesn't understand why he isn't more of a hero like on the television shows, and he also seems to get a strange sense of enjoyment from murdering someone. This was, I think we talked offline, entertaining episode. We got some answers clearly revealed about Labibi and other things, and we also got sort of a little bit of, I don't want to say psychoanalysis, but a little bit of more information about sec units, about Murderbot, about who they are, how they're built, and maybe what's some of the things that happen with them when they don't have a governor module. What sort of caught your mind or caught your eye the most in this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I guess first of all, just that I really did enjoy it. I came out of this episode thinking the show's just getting better and better. Um, Finally at the point where I started feeling like recommending it to people in a
Mm-hmm.
full-throated way that I maybe hadn't done before, where up to now, maybe I've been saying, yeah, I've been watching Murderbot, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
sort of after this episode, I found myself wanting to say, like, you should watch Murderbot. It's really good.
Yeah.
So we got that going for us. As you say, I mean, a lot of it is we saw the Labibi thing coming. We can talk about her a bit more, of course. We can hit on the plot points, and we should. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess as a viewer, I actually like how short the episodes are, but then turning around to kind of like analyze the episode or whatever, like we're doing here, in some ways it does feel like maybe there's not a ton to work through, but I don't know. Where would you like to start?
Yeah, no, just to that point, I just found that I've almost forgotten having this. I think this one was 25 minutes long. The idea that, oh, we can have a show that hits all the points it needs to, covers all the bases, and yet we don't have to see the however long the trip was for Mince and Murderbot to fly the hopper back to the crew. They sort of they fix it, they show up, right? We just sort of things that get implied that we don't have to. We've got some of the fat cut off, I guess, in some of these things, which I've just found to be very good. And like I said, almost forgotten when you get a 21, 22 minute show. I
Yeah, it's
guess
not like
just
with like a silo where it would take like 20 minutes for them to fix the
right.
hopper or something like that. Yeah. Sorry.
So let's just start with the whole Labibi of it all. Like I said, we sort of telegraphed this a little bit last week when you have someone that shows up who was the lone survivor or something. Um, we get this sense of she's got the crew held hostage, seeking some information. She's quickly killed by Murderbot. But what is the sense of what do you think she was after there? She talked about some things that she wanted, but what do you think was her goal there by trying to capture this crew?
Yeah, see, here's the thing that I think precisely we should interrogate, right? So you've asked the right question, right? Because okay, we kind of saw coming that Labibi was not, really who she said she was. Maybe she was involved in the attack on Doubtfall ultimately, and so on and so forth. And like, okay, we called it, hooray, whatever. I don't know how surprising that was to anyone, but maybe it was
Yeah.
more surprising to some other people than us. If you listen to last week's podcast, we predicted this basically. But one thing I thought was kind of interesting there is in this question of, okay, well, what does she want, or what do the people she was working for want, right?
Yeah.
Because she's really pushing for information about the Preservation Alliance's experience with the glitches in the map and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So that would seem to imply that the bad guys, as it were, also don't know what's going on there, I guess,
Yeah.
which is kind of interesting. Um, so Yeah. I mean, I guess this remains the front where I kind of wish the show had given us a little bit more to work with at this point, and I hope that they do soon. Because yeah, I mean, I don't even know how much I can speculate about what they want because I don't feel like we quite know enough.
Yeah, I do find it interesting that this is the information that they're withholding, who she's with, what they want, what does the Preservation Alliance have that they need. Um, it's just the information that we don't quite have yet, and maybe the reveal is that important or that necessary to where they're going to take the story next, if there is a story next, that they need to sort of slow play that. But yeah, I do find we may have touched on this last week, but if you could just give me a little bit more about the different motivations of the people that are on these two sides or on these, the Preservation Alliance, the Deltfall, this now third party that's come and attack them. I think that would give me a little bit more investment in sort of where this is headed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess on the other hand, just to play devil's advocate against myself a little bit almost, but the narratively maybe it does work insofar as if we care about these people at this point. I guess I'm invested in what happens to these people. I'm not sure that I like them. Mensa
Yeah.
seems pretty cool. Mensa seems
Yeah.
pretty cool. I'm not sure I want. I'm not sure I'd want to hang out with the rest of them. Um, but invested in what happens to Murderbot and all of that, and then they are experiencing a threat, and they don't really know what it is either. So,
Right.
there's a way in which that functions. I guess there's a threat. We don't know what it is. We don't know why it is. We don't know where it's coming from. We don't know what might happen next or why. And there's a way in which that does maybe that makes the tension higher, and part of why we want more information is to lower it, to say like, oh, well, okay, now we understand what's going on. So, um, yeah, I mean, maybe if we were just watching the show and not trying to do a podcast about it, we wouldn't even have this debate
Yeah.
at all.
That's true. Yeah, we need the material to discuss, to debate, to react to, and at least on that side of things, we may not be getting as much as we think that we need. Whereas if I say sort of pick a side or pick a plot line that I think is more color and more interest and I think attracted me more, it would be this learning more about this sec unit, this Murderbot that has disengaged itself from the governor module, is learning what it's like not only to be human but interact with humans, and sometimes it's prescription for now the people that are with that go through certain things. We see this incident this week with Mensa, who they feel like they are stuck, that they can't get out of where they have crashed, they can't repair the hopper, so she sort of begins having an anxiety attack of sorts. Sec unit is able to diagnose that it's not a heart attack. It has something to do with anxiety, something to do with panic. So he prescribes some episodes of Sanctuary Moon to her, a tranquil episode of that, right? But then we also get to explore sort of what it means for him to have, or it to have some level of anxiety. It's just sort of interesting things it's exploring there.
Yeah, you want to try to respect the pronouns. It's
Right.
tough sometimes, because it would probably be easier if they didn't show us Alexander Skarsgård's face all the time. But I guess I understand why they do that, right? You got kind of a prestige actor in here to some degree. You don't want to just
Exactly.
constantly have his face covered up. But yeah, Murderbot isn't it. Um, but I guess that's the question that we're talking about, and I do find myself thinking about a lot is the status of Murderbot as an it, as a robot, as a sec unit, these various terms we have available, as not human, and certainly Murderbot doesn't identify as human.
Right.
Um, we get some information in this episode indicating that the like flesh or the biological parts are from clones.
Yes.
I don't know if that makes us feel better than the idea that they're from corpses, because we still have to ask, well, clones of whom and how, and
Right. Right.
can you just clone the body part, or are you cloning a full person and then killing them and taking their body parts? We don't know those details. And apparently there's also some like biological stuff like that in the ships, like the Hopper. So like,
Right.
okay, that's all interesting, and I want more information about that. But to focus it on Murderbot itself, there's that question of to what extent is this character human? I guess we could put it that way, or maybe more
Mhm.
precisely, to what extent does Murderbot have emotions and feelings and all of that? Because the show keeps playing with that. And it's at least clear that it has feelings like annoyance and frustration and
Yes.
anxiety, right?
Yes.
Because it's showing Mensa this episode of Sanctuary Moon because Murderbot itself finds that episode to be calming, right? And Murderbot's worried about her anxiety spreading to it. Like we can't both just have a freak out here. We're going to die if we do, right? We got to get it together and fix the ship and so on and so forth.
Okay, yeah, I found that interaction between Sec Unit and Mensa very engaging, very I think just as we learn more about the human part of Sec Unit and what it is becoming, how it is becoming, or how it's learning to not only engage, interact, and become more like the people that it's with. Just very interesting. Um, I don't know. Maybe I didn't expect going into this show that there would be as much of this, just sort of the psychology or the neurology of what it's like to explore interaction between people, even though this is actually between a person and a sec unit. Just found that, like I said, this interaction, these conversations, even though not too much is happening other than just what we learn, found them to be fascinating compared to just the not exactly sure what's happening back with Labibi and the crew and sort of what's happening there.
Yeah, and I think it's really central to what the show's about, and
Hmm.
what I presume the books are about, and so on, right? Almost more central probably than the stuff we were just worried about not having enough information about. That the story is this kind of exploration of um, Murderbot's psychology or whatever term we might want to use,
Yeah.
and that's where I think ultimately with the structure of this episode, as the two plot lines come together and the closing narration and so on, brings that to a head quite nicely, right? Where, particularly here, throughout the episode, it was like Murderbot and Mensa are kind of bonding, they're working through this crisis together, and so on, right? And Murderbots, maybe pulling on these TV shows a bit in order to do it, but at the same time is effectively doing it. What I mean is like guiding her through the spinal surgery stuff, right? Which she's very put off by and doesn't want to do, and doesn't think that she can do, right? And Murderbot, manages to say, "Oh, you can do it," and so on and so forth. And as she finishes, even like makes a little joke and so on, right? So then coming back, Labibi. I mean, I thought this scene was just absolutely hilarious. I don't know, but I rewound it and watched it a couple more times immediately, right? Um, just for fun. But because she doesn't even finish the line that she's saying, and she's like going
That's
to
right.
point the gun through Athens' head, and just boom, explodes her head. And this is something we should talk about a bit more here. So, like, everyone freaks out massively.
Yeah.
So, what thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, it was. I did find that funny because, in one sense, this is why he is there. This is why you, even though reluctantly, brought a sec unit on board was to do things just like this. Um, but they have assigned these feelings and these emotions and these sort of personalities to to the sec unit, such that they can't believe that he would do the thing that he was hired and programmed to do when there is a threat, which is immediately eliminate that threat. So they're just, yeah, they completely freak out about this. and which just leads to this hilarious. I don't understand why it's not like on my TV shows when
Yeah,
when a hero comes in and saves the day.
yeah. And my serials, generally, when someone saves the day, they're getting hugs and being applauded
Right.
and all of that, which is true, right? And so it's funny because, of course, we're watching a TV show, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it's playing with that difference between fiction and real life. If you can put
Yeah.
it that way. But again, we are watching a TV show. But it certainly makes sense that these folks, in particular, the Preservation Alliance people, freak out to the extent that they do, right? None of them could imagine ever doing anything like that. And Murderbot does it without a second thought, literally, like almost without a first thought, almost
Yeah.
just knee jerk stimulus response, boom, dead. Um, I mean, like Garathan makes a couple of points that are rational enough, right? That Murderbot could have hit him, you know,
That's right.
you didn't. It's fine. Settle down. But the other one that, well, now they can't get any more information from the BB because, well, she's dead.
Yeah.
Um, so, there's some validity to that point, but I'm kind of more interested in thinking about how everyone else reacts with just screaming, wailing, retching. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, um, and it makes some sense, right? Because I get the feeling, well, probably these people have never seen a dead body before, and certainly haven't seen someone's head exploded right in front of them, splattering blood all across their faces and all of that, right? So they're sort of traumatized by the experience in a way that I think makes sense. But then
There
it
is, yeah.
opens that disjunction again between Murderbot and the humans in a new way.
There is this instant trauma, as you mentioned, of even though she is in presently holding them hostage, presently holding guns to them, that yeah, you see something that shocking, that sort of leaves your mind for a moment, and she just becomes a body with an exploded head, and they almost turn their bewilderment and their confusion onto Murderbot after this happens, and not like I said, a hero's welcome of sorts, but yes, that's pretty, I would guess, human response to seeing a head explode for the first time. You're probably right.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, I think it makes sense. Particularly, part of what is genius about the way the show is set up is that these human beings are the kinds of people they are, right?
Yes.
And they've very much been characterized along these lines of, Bardouage, right? Very much the kind of person who wants to calm Labibi down and convince her to come join the Preservation Alliance. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
we'll take care of you, and so on and so forth. Are you going to give me 1,000,000 credits? But with that, all of that exchange, but that we're dealing with people who, at a certain level, believe or want to believe that they can resolve things in non-violent ways, compassionate ways, and Lubibi's just got a bad idea in her head, and so on and so forth. Where then responding with that ultra violence um, is hard for them to fathom or what have you.
Yeah, and,
So
and clearly they did not expect to have this type of incident happen on the mission they were on. So, but to your point, these are the absolute opposite of the people you need in that type of moment. So, on one hand, it's good that they have the second. On the other, this for someone that has lost their gut, or for an entity that has lost its governor module, he's set up with perhaps the most or the worst group of people possible to have to try and protect, explain what's happening, understand why they're feeling the way that they feel. They have again assigned these things to Murderbot that no one else does. So they seem to be the both the best and worst group for him to be around, or for it to be around at this moment.
yeah, I mean, narratively, I think it is sort of the best, right? As I was
Yeah.
saying earlier, I don't know how much I like these people or want to spend time around them personally, but the fact that they are prone to want to view Murderbot as a person
Yes.
really, gets the story going, right? Whereas, as we saw in like the very first scene of the series, in lots of situations, that wasn't the case, right? You just have the sec unit, and I'm thinking about the scene in the mining colony or whatever, and the
Yeah.
guys being particularly mean to Murderbot. But even if it's not that, even if it's not like, hey, set your hand on fire or whatever, you can imagine in all sorts of situations that the human beings involved will just be totally ignoring the sec unit.
Right, right. They're just
So
tools. They're just machines. They just serve a purpose. And yet this group is flabbergasted when this sec unit does serve the purpose that it's supposed to. Yeah, it's just pretty interesting to set up.
yeah, I agree. All right. Anything else you want to hit on this one before we wrap it up?
I think that's about it. I guess we have 4 episodes left of this season, and yeah, just I guess the question on the table that we're most interested in is, yeah, what are we going to learn about why these people are there, what they are after, who is after them? We have a little, just droplets of clues, but I would imagine as we start pushing here towards the end, we're going to start hearing some of that.
Yeah, I'd imagine we have to get some more information about the nature of the threat
Yeah.
soon, hopefully next week, at least to some degree. So we'll be back then to talk about episode 7. Hopefully you will join us. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do leave a good rating, review, all that good stuff. If you're on YouTube, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Really appreciate it. You can follow TV Obsessive on social media. Search for TV Obsessive. You should find us on whatever platform you're on, basically. Check out tvobsessive.com. You can find weekly recap articles from myself on Murderbot there if you're interested in reading about the show, along with written work on any number of other TV shows. We're in a little bit of a lull as far as new TV goes, but Chris is writing on Rick and Morty each week if you're interested
That's
in
right.
that. And some other stuff will be coming down the pike. And of course, there's all kinds of work on older TV and so on and so forth. So encourage people to go to tvobsessive.com, poke around a bit, and hopefully enjoy the site. And we'll be back with you next week.
All right. See you then for episode 7.